Welcome back to a special episode of Bourbon and Ash. Today we're going to kind of talk about the bourbon industry, the market, what we are noticing, some of the trends, whether it's good or bad.
Right.
And kind of what got this started was we were having a conversation a while back, actually, about these bourbon hunters and allocated bottles and liquor stores and everybody that's selling these high key items. I guess they're
right. The unicorns.
They're the unicorns. Well, are they really unicorns?
That's the question.
That's the question.
That's where we're at. You mentioned we've talked about this in the past. I think what really stemmed it was we were also trying to acquire a bottle of the Russell's 15. That was last year, right?
Yeah.
And there was a big frenzy about it. There wasn't a lot out in the markets, and when they were, I mean, you could find those anywhere between $350 to $500, just depending on where you went. One of the things that really got our attention when we were talking about it, because we weren't able to acquire a bottle at that time, we just started doing some research and kind of find out the Russell's 15 was an 80,000 bottle release, right? So that really presented a lot of questions insofar as, so these bottles are supposed to be allocated because of the short runs that they're making. So they're very specific bottle runs.
They're supposed to be limited.
They're supposed to be limited.
Yes.
That is the word. That is the correct term.
Yes.
80,000 bottles doesn't sound limited.
That is not limited. So
That's
to
what
give you
we're
an
saying.
example, several other distilleries, I'm not going to name them off, have put out limited releases, which are only either one produced and sold in the distillery, and we're talking like 2 to 3 barrels, which is the equivalent of maybe
450, 500
50,
bottles.
500 bottles. That is a limited release. That is an allocated bottle. If you're able to get your hands on something like that, it's not sold nationwide. It's not sold in the stores. It's only sold, for the most part, in the distilleries.
In a distillery.
Sometimes they release them to a select amount of liquor stores to
Correct.
get the name out there. Those are unicorns. But what we're finding is that they are screwing around with the marketing and
Yes.
mass producing bottles, big label distilleries, and then selling them as allocated bottles, which, again, Russell's 15
Right.
is a fantastic bottle.
It is.
And I would have the opportunity, I would buy like 2 or 3. One
Right.
for me to drink,
Absolutely.
one for me to set aside for a rainy day,
Yeah.
and one to maybe save for when my kids graduate high school.
Sure.
But in this case, when they were producing that many, I mean, is it really?
Right.
And that stems, so the next question, right? Obviously, we would all like to have access to these bottles. But that stems another question. If they were really taking their time and making these bottles special because of their procedures, because of how the selection happened, taking so many barrels and then they go through a process of elimination, and the people who are involved are really, really honing in to have a product that is truly special, right? Mm-hmm. So when they're doing that, we all love it. We love the fact that they do that. We don't love the fact that there isn't enough. So that stems the next question. They are producing a lot more. Where do you draw the line? Where are these barrels being, how are they coming up with so many barrels? If they used to take select barrels, you have to think, most of these are quadrupling in size. And are they taking barrels where, hey, we've got these would have been definitely a no, but since we have to produce so many and we have a limited amount of product, they're going to have to make the cut.
And here's an important factor. When you're doing unicorn bourbon or a special release bourbon or a allocated bourbon, it's because the master distiller is finding a unique batch of barrels all made at the same time in a certain part of the warehouse where it just aged better than any other barrels that they've tasted. So because of that, they will pull from a small quantity of barrels, maybe as much as 7 to 10, because they're finding some unique flavors maybe in the middle of the pack on the 4th floor in their rick house that just aged better than any other barrel. So when they pull those 4 or 5 barrels and then they actually bottle those, it's because of the unique flavors that the master distiller is tasting. And so they'll put those aside for a special allocated release. 80,000 bottles is a crap ton of barrels.
There are.
And that whole rick house did not age equally.
Right.
So,
And that's what we're
And
trying
so
to
you're
do.
not getting the quality that you would think you would be getting.
They're manipulating the market and they're selling you something that is not truly what we know of today as an allocated bottle of bourbon. And that's where I think we need to be a little bit worrisome, or just maybe a little bit more knowledgeable that
Of
you're
what it is,
not,
how they're coming.
you're not overpaying, because you are. You should not be spending $500-$600 on a Russell's 15.
Right.
That bottle out of the distillery was like $189.
Right.
Secondhand liquor stores, it's, if you could find it, it's $380 to $500.
Yeah.
Third hand or non-primary, secondary
Yeah.
is $1,000.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So, and not just to pick on Russell's, we're not trying to make this information just on one company. There are other companies who you will know without me telling you who they are. They would release 2 a year. They released 4 last year. 4 releases every 3 months. So they used to do one in June.
Well, so for an example,
Yeah.
Jim Beam, Booker's. Booker's only gets released 4 times a year, once a quarter, once every 3 months. That is a special barrel that Jimmy or Freddie and Freddie Sr. are finding in the warehouse, and they're saying, okay, we found 4 or 5 barrels that we're going to make into this next quarter's Booker's
And
release.
that's how- and
that's the example. We understand that. That makes sense.
Right.
But I don't know. You have to be real careful.
Right.
So do you think, does everyone put out how many barrels were from their special release? Like you said, there was...
Well,
Or-
that information is
It's out
available,
there?
but you got to look for it.
Yeah, I don't think they come out and say that.
They won't.
I think they have to say this came from 6 barrels, or they produce so many bottles. This
Right.
is one of so many.
Right, if you
But I don't know
have
that
the
they
number of bottles, you
advertise
can
it.
kind of guess how many barrels.
I almost feel like, sorry not to interrupt
No,
you.
go ahead.
I'll let you get back to that. But I almost feel like it's the whole thing where aged very old, small batch. What's a small batch? I think we're getting a little hazy on allocated bottles. And let's think about this. Why did they become allocated? Because it was a short run, right?
Limited release.
It was a limited release.
If you guys are liking our content and you guys agree with us, leave those comments, hit that
Yeah.
like, share, subscribe. Really helps with the algorithms. We see a lot of people are watching our videos, but they are not subscribers. So don't know what you're waiting for. Hit that subscribe so you get notifications when we're releasing new releases.
Post your thoughts on this. What are your thoughts? What do you think? What are your friends? What do they see? What do they think? Have you even talked about this? Is this in the back of everybody's mind, but nobody's saying it?
Yeah.
That could be the case, and we'd love to see some comments and I don't know, get a different perspective.
Yeah.
Maybe we see it from one side of the fence and it's different. And again, to reiterate, we're not saying that we don't want to see a lot of these products that we've all come to love. Everybody has a bottle that they really enjoy and they would love to be able to get it. However, it's that cat and mouse game with allocations, short runs, which I think at the end we're producing some fantastic stuff.
Yeah, no, and that's what we need to get back to. So we'll end it on that note. Hoping that everybody, figures this out and
Yeah.
we can get the market back to where it should be, and maybe we'll see that in the next couple of years. So we're hoping
Yeah, absolutely.
Quality over quantity.
quality over quantity.
That is true.
Good note to end on there, Tricia. Okay, well, until next time, please remember always drink responsibly.